Hello and welcome to the Monday show on Our Game. Delighted to be joined by Niall Moran, a former Limerick star. Niall, how are you this morning?
Great, Mike. Cows milked and all, ready to go here. I think I missed you last Thursday. MSOS went out at 8:30. Most farmers don't do social media at 8:30 in the morning. 8:30 in the evening now, Mike, we'd be a lot more available. But no, we're good this morning now, Mike. Great day yesterday, thank God.
Good to have you. I'm donning the Limerick jersey. We're sponsored once again by orgaretro.com. Go to orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Loads of different jerseys just on the, well, I was going to say on the eve of championship. Some championship has started, the football championship in the Joe McDonagh. The hurling will be kicking off in a couple of weeks. I suppose there's only one place to start now, particularly when I have you down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh yesterday. You'd have to say a dominant performance from Limerick. Maybe a slow first quarter. Once they got motor, once Barry Nash got that goal, it was routine enough, you'd have to say, thereafter, even though they'd be disappointed probably not scoring. And I think they didn't score after the 61st minute, but it was comfortable. 11-point win, 220 to 15 points.
Awesome. I suppose for a finish, there was periods of that game where they were awesome. I suppose even the last 10-15 minutes were totally subdued, maybe in tandem with what the National League was. But look, I suppose their ability to maybe weigh up teams, size what's coming at them, stay calm in the first 15 minutes, just see what's coming at them, see what's being thrown at them, and being able to adapt in game. That is huge. And I suppose one of the things there this year, Mike, is that we see that we no longer have the Mayo Ferna running onto the pitch, instructing whatever else. But the way it looks like with Limerick there, they have 15 Mayo Fernas because they suppose have developed that skill set whereby in game they have that intrinsic knowledge to be able to work something out, be able to see it in the moment. And I don't know, does it come with experience of winning over a number of years, or does it just come with sublime coaching? But either which way, that's probably the scariest thing for the opposition who are coming, because if a team come with plan A and plan A isn't working, they may be stumped, whereas Limerick they have a kind of an artillery of how to work things out. And look, it was still the intensity for finish wasn't what you would consider a championship. There was elements of it in the first 20 minutes that were really exciting, really good, but it just, I think once Limerick's goal went in, it just tapered. And I suppose the nature of Limerick's goal really probably upset Kilkenny more than anything else.
Just what you say there, even something as simple as it's basic motivation, but after about 8 or 9 minutes, John Kiley just lobbed a few volleys definitely in towards Grode Hegarty and a couple of others who were maybe just off it in the first couple of minutes. I remember Grode was blocked down a couple of times. Basic things, but it seemed to kind of spur them into action. I think they said they were having some problems with the Kilkenny sharp puck out, and they were maybe struggling with a few things Kilkenny were doing, like really early, I'm talking about. But as you say, the ability to adapt and change mid-game, they really looked like they had all the answers really after 15 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose, look, what's the argument? Like, Limerick probably didn't score for the first 10, they went 3-0 down. What, the first score from play was probably after 15 or 16 minutes, but from there on in, I suppose they really subdued Kilkenny. Look, I suppose given it as a spectator going down, Mike, right? Number one, I suppose there wasn't a whole pile of talk around the final, and I suppose for people to have to go to Cork when they didn't necessarily have to, it kind of maybe took a little bit from the lead up to it, but there was still a healthy-ish
geez, Niall, just on that, it must have been 10-1 Limerick to Kilkenny people there.
It was every bit of it. It was every bit of it there, 17,000. And do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people made a weekend of it, but like, it wasn't the fact of going to Cork. It was the sense of when you didn't need to be going to Cork. Like, I think Limerick or Kilkenny both happily enough with a tossed home or away when Thurles wasn't available. And look, Easter Saturday was available for people. And the other side of it then as well, like Easter Sunday, it's a family day. We don't get too many family days. But look, that's an argument for another day. I definitely think, look, the first 20 minutes, okay, Kilkenny were vicious in the stand. The few that were there, we were surrounded by a few of them. And I suppose it kind of took me back there to last year's under-20 final. Like, Limerick kind of went up to the under-20 final. Ordinarily, there'd be huge excitement. But on the back of having won the All-Ireland or whatever else, back of having won our All-Ireland successes, Limerick kind of went to that 20s final. A bit kind of just going out for the day to watch a match, whereas Kilkenny people were venomous in the stand. And obviously, Kilkenny turned over Limerick in that game. And I was there yesterday. This is more the same. And there was venom. And in fairness, Kilkenny, they pushed up. Okay, they really pushed up. They asked questions in Limerick. They put them under pressure. Probably Limerick let the ball go out a little bit easier than what they would have liked after Kilkenny's puckouts. But again, I just thought once that goal went in, it was the nature of it. It was soft. It was totally untypical Kilkenny. When I say soft, that's not taken away from Aaron's catch and Dummy and John Barry's finish. They were brilliant. But like John, Paul Walsh was out in front. Like, it's totally uncharacteristic. But I suppose some of those mistakes, Mike, right? And again, like, do you know what I mean? you forget sometimes when you got the opportunity to play at elite level, sometimes you're always operating after red. It's like the death zone above in Everest. Like the oxygen is thin, your mind plays havoc with you. Do you know what I mean? And then like your decision making, your execution, it goes out the window because you're fucked. All right, and I think there was an element of that with Kilkenny. Like those hits started playing havoc, and it doesn't seem that those physical nature starts to take a lot out of Limerick. Whereas it looks like teams are gassing at certain periods a lot earlier than what they would against other opposition. And I think that's the reason a lot of these so-called mistakes happen, because it's just look physically they're monsters and they're still ahead of the curve in terms of how they're conditioned, in terms of the longevity they've been on the road. So look, what I'm trying to say, I thought Kenny really threw it at him for 20-25 minutes. It was really intriguing, but I just think that mistake, and I think they started to gas out a little bit towards the end of the half, and I suppose the Limerick just took off and autopilot after.
It seems like, even looking back at the Waterford semi-final a couple of years ago, teams can throw everything at Limerick physically, and they just seem to be able to soak it up and kick on. Like, in other teams, as you say, are gassed. And Limerick, like, to me, Limerick didn't leave third gear yesterday, I have to say. And when you put it out on paper, you say, like, no Declan Hannon, no Kyle Hayes, no William O'Donoghue, no score from Keane Lynch, no score from Gerard Hegarty, who were both quiet enough, no score from Peter Casey. They score 220 and win, pulling up by 11 points. Like, is it a bit? Do you ever find yourself like rubbing your eyes in disbelief at what you're actually experiencing at the moment?
You're feeding the hype train anyway, there, Michael.
that was my opening paragraph of my match report in the Independent this morning.
Yeah, and I can imagine if they happen to be overturned during the year, this would be a conversation that would be rehashed. I suppose going in third gear, one thing that struck me there was a couple of times when lads got wicked belts from Limerick. And this thing was Barry Nash there in front of us at one stage. Took an awful belt across the midriff, right? And he was under pressure, and he never went down, right? The only guy possibly who went down during the game was Mike Casey. Mike Casey was taken off later in the game. He was hurt.
That was with a HIA, actually, yeah. They took him off, because he got dizzy later, yeah.
Right, so to say that he was the only guy that went down, and he was obviously the guy who went off. So this idea of third gear, I suppose it's one way of quenching the opposition, isn't it? As in, if you think, gee, it's like when you be doing a run in the pre-season and you'd be absolutely ball bagged, and you'd be after winning the long run, and there you'd be standing around chirping and breathing out your mouth, whatever, but you're faking it, like. And there's time, I suppose, by doing that, it nearly sends more fear up the opposition. They're saying, right, hey, we're throwing everything at them. And these boys are strolling around the place as if there's nothing wrong. But I'm sure deep down inside, they're burning as well. Like, but it was just like, going back to what I was saying about Barry Nash. I remember we would have played, going back to a different bygone era, playing like when the shoe was on the other foot. All right, we remember playing Kilkenny there in a All-Ireland quarter final there in, I think it was 12. And like that was that generation of real top Kilkenny hurlers was starting to filter out. Like they still obviously pulled a couple of All-Irelands in the meantime, but there was one incident in that game where I think it was Wayne Mack absolutely sowed Richie Power. I'd say he could have broken a couple of his ribs or whatever else. And Power was goosed on the ground. And I remember Shefflin, just something, the Shefflin came up and pulled him up. Like Power was for the ambulance, like, and up, you don't go down, you walk off the pitch. And I just think, again, like, I think a lot of everything what Limerick are doing, it's a blueprint of what Kilkenny did. And that was one of the things where you don't show weakness and you keep burying the opposition. And again, if we think back to Kilkenny, you'd always think you're in the game with them up to half time or up to 45 minutes. And then it was like running in quicksand after. You'd think you were just doing the best. And you look at the scoreboard and you'd be 12 points down and you'd be there. How did that happen? And I just think that is the eerie sense for teams against Limerick at the moment. All right, that I suppose you feel as if you're running in quicksand there, that you're going all out. And all of a sudden you look at the scoreboard and they're 10, 12 points because they're killing you with these they're killing you with 1,000 stabs, like, 1,000 cuts even. So,
and just on that, the psychological thing of Limerick taking a hit and a man standing up, it's almost like it does feed into the whole psychological thing of these lads are fitter, because it's been built up that they are fitter, they're stronger, they're better conditioned than any other team, and you are literally only like maybe a couple of seconds from being down in your hunkers nearly, but you just don't allow it to happen, I suppose, because it feeds into it, and it feeds into the mentality. And a lot of teams are probably fair degree beaten before they go out to play Limerick at the moment, but it does only take one team to take them down for that aura of invincibility to go as well.
Yeah, look, I said I'm going to use the caveat of league. Like Limerick, in fairness, have won 7 games on the trot to win a competition. That is some going to win 7 games without ever looking in. Oh, sorry, I'm on the last Cork first game. Sorry, we've short memories of Limerick. No, but as not obviously last Cork, she won 6 out of 7. But so to want to win, obviously to win All Ireland, like without having a hit, you have to win 7 on the trot. So like everybody knows, there's going to be at least 2, if not 3, of those days when things aren't going to fire. And I would also say, just having spoken to a couple of guys who are involved with County Hurling, and it's not that you'll be trying to pick the brains. The last thing you want to be doing is ask them what's going on. But it just came up in a couple of the games, not against Limerick, against other opposition, where if you were a defender and ordinarily, like if a forward hit a bad wide or something, you'd be kind of pushing in against them. You'd be kind of ribbing them, like. And I just spoke to a couple of guys and were saying, "Hey, we didn't do it, man. We're kind of holding them back. Like we're not giving. There's a time and a place to throw out what you have, and for a lot of the teams that were chasing Limerick, the time and the place wasn't in the last 2 or 3 months. So I do really think that the challenge, and it's not cliche, but I do think that the challenge coming Limerick's way will be a lot more pronounced as we go along. I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but I am saying the gap will definitely narrow in. All right, and so that is the nature of championship, and in the sense that, like John, lads are still trying to get to that level. Like we looked at yesterday, okay. It was 116 to 14 points there. Kilkenny were in the game. Limerick had kind of fallen into a slight lull. And it was crying for TJ Reid to come on. All right.
Hmm.
And all right, like it was crying that if Kilkenny really wanted to battle, it was crying that he had definitely 20 minutes in him, surely, when he was tagged out. Do you know what I mean? To get him up to pace. And Derek Lean didn't go there. You looked at Adrian Mullen, okay? Up to 45 minutes, Adrian Mullen, bar none, was the best Kilkenny hurler on the pitch. His work, even looking at him, he's not the most natural worker, obviously phenomenal finisher, but he worked really hard for a lot of it. And say between 45 and 52, there was a couple of instances. One time there, he kind of had a chance on the right sideline and kind of turned back in and got dispossessed. Another time then he chased down Sean Finn in the corner and kind of let a little kind of pitch and little flick in across him. But Ling pulled him after 52. Are you telling me if that was not Ireland's semi-final or quarter-final, even if the numbers on Mullen's GPS or whatever were, do you know what I mean, were kind of negative, do you think he was going to pull him off? He wasn't. So there is that caveat to what went on yesterday. I'm like, that's not taken away. Look, Jesus Christ, I'd have given my right hand to win a National League medal, and I'm not, Jesus, I'm the furthest thing from being disingenuous about it. But I just think there is a huge amount of teams that have held back a little bit because maybe in the experience some of them last year, even Waterford being a prime example, even Dublin to a lesser extent, they gassed out wicked early in the championship, and they're not willing to make that same mistake twice.
Yeah, we just fly through a couple of comments. Niall, loads of comments coming in here. Fergus Butler just said, great day out in Parky Queeve. Lots to improve on for Limerick too. Like, and there is a lot to improve on. Would you have been in any way slightly disappointed with, 15 second half wides, not scoring from the 61st minute on? There was probably a chance. This could have been a 20-point win realistically if they'd put over, 2/3 of those chances in the second half. That in any way worrying, or is it just this is league and there's a fair opportunity for things to work on there over the coming weeks?
I think it's people finding sound bites to play him down, to be honest. Like, okay, yeah, there's 15 points, but like, sure, didn't score for the last 15 minutes. There was 220 to 14 or 15 for an awful lot of it. Look, they had a slow start. They still recovered by half time. We were 113 to 10 points at half time. She went out to whatever they said, 116 to 13, went out 116 to 14. I honestly don't think I don't think there's a lot of, like, John Kiley has to come with something. You have to find something to knock him down with. Yeah, some of their ball use was poor. Garrod at times, a little bit, maybe in some of his shooting, some of the things he did was disappointing. But you couldn't turn around and say that's a worry for Limerick. Like, there is only one worry, Mike, for Limerick. The worry is Nicky Quaid. All right, the worry is if anything happens, Nicky Quaid, a lot of what Limerick do, do you know what I mean? He is the pillar, he's the cornerstone of everything in what Limerick do in terms like his ability to get puck outs away at a high level of execution. What you would have found yesterday was Limerick allowed first receiver to have it off Owen Murphy an awful lot, but like the key ball here in this new game is the transition into second ball. And what you were finding was Limerick were being returning Kilkenny every time on the second ball. They were allowing off that easy ball, that no-brainer ball was allowed off. Whereas with Nicky, he is executing puckouts of a higher level whereby, do you know what I mean, the second ball is in at times it's probably in a scoring zone. Do you know what I mean? Balls in transition zone, and it is the big worry for Limerick, right? Like what you've seen to Kylie's credit and Connacht's credit in that is that they have found cover in all positions. They found cover in all positions. They were looking for an extra midfielder in Barry Murphy even for the league. Probably didn't go his way yesterday, but yet Cal O'Neill came back into that position. So they have a third midfielder lined up, ready to go. David Reedis was lined up. But if anything happens, Nicky, we are in bother. And I know there's two goalies, young sub goalies who are learning their trade, and that takes time. But like that is a pressure zone of a goalie there. Like, and look, you look at the last two games Limerick have lost. Nicky hasn't been in goals.
Yeah, fair point. Even just, he's so comfortable. Like, you just think, yeah, it has to be nearly an exceptional shot to beat him as well, almost. You know what I mean? He always holds his ground on the line, never panics, never falls to the ground or anything like that. Just fly through another few quick comments here. P-Well74, who is a Patrick Swell man, I'm sure. Have KK learned anything in league? Players ended up back in last year's positions, or new players off. Billy Drennan went off early in particular. Didn't really get into a duel with Sean Finn or Mike Casey. Was kind of out around the half-forward line, which I thought was peculiar. They didn't feed their full forward line, which I thought was very strange as well. They didn't get any ball to Massey Keown or Owen Cody or Drennan at times either. One Stop Auto says, we have learned that people way overhype Kilkenny, potentially. Joe Butler just says, congrats to Limerick, a great display, fully deserving winners. Limerick's skill, power and interplay just blew Kilkenny apart, and you'd have to say, from being down there, it really looked like that. Kilkenny's first touch let them down badly, and they failed to penetrate a solid Limerick defence. There was times, Niall, yesterday where Kilkenny were forced to nearly play the ball across their own 65, and I don't know how comfortable they look doing it, and even trying to score from range. I'm not sure. I don't think it comes as comfortable to them as it comes to a Declan Hannon or a Kyle Hayes or even a Darrell Donovan or someone like that. Like, if someone is to beat Limerick at some stage this year, do you think it will be doing, a mirror of what Limerick do, or will it be something completely different that they haven't seen before?
Well, I've kind of said it before, though, Mike. And again, if you try to ape them, forget about it, because they're just better at it than you. They have the artillery around it. One thing is, like, and I will say, but the team that had the kind of greatest, I suppose, I don't know, success, is that the word you call it? So it's the greatest kind of greatest success against Limerick were Tipperary, probably for 50 minutes, right? And they stay true to what they are in terms of kind of crossfield ball, getting it in quick, kind of moving them in at angles. For Kilkenny's DNA is their ability to win primary possession. And in the first maybe 10 minutes, they trusted themselves. And maybe the last couple of balls, I just thought that they tried to overplay the ball. Like you said, like when they got to that, what was the delivery zone is what you maybe call it, so that your own 65, that delivery zone. That's when Kilkenny bang it in. Do you know what I mean? Throw it in there, and like they didn't do it. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose you know yourself there in your over teams. If you're playing a team that you perceive that are better than you become so wound up in covering off their main men and everything else. Like lads are running around like rabbits in the headlights, trying to overthink. Well, hold up a second. What had we worked on in order to do this? Whereas when it comes natural and you trust what you're doing and see where it takes it. Do you know what I mean? See where it takes it, because trying to ape them, it isn't going to happen. And I suppose, look, for Billy Drennan there yesterday, it was a baptism of fire. If TJ comes back and he starts hitting the freeze, is Billy Drennan, will he be playing? Does he bring enough in open play? I'm not sure. All right, but again, TJ, like we're talking about the miracle man, Jesus, us TJ going 35, we're expecting to carry, not almost to carry a team, but carry your forward line. Like, it's a little bit much to expect too. So
there's a lot expected of it. Like, it's almost like TJ's going to come back and it's going to flick a switch, but it's not kind of that simple, especially, as you say, at his stage of the game as well.
No, it's not like, and even there was elements of it there, even when they kind of played Ballygunner, that he was operating at his wits at what was essentially an elite club level. And if you find yourself maybe starting to operate off your wits like that, then at intercounty level, it might just be a step maybe too far. But then again, last year's All-Ireland, he was brilliant. So, as in, do you know what I mean? Far be it for me to write him off. But I suppose, look, if you look at the nature of subs Kilkenny brought on yesterday, like I know Keane Kenny has done a little bit or whatever else, but they wouldn't have little match under the previous generation of Kilkenny subs. And then in the converse, like Limerick probably only, okay, they brought on 5 for a finish, but they had a high quality sub to bring on. Like I said it here, Mike, right? The 3 of the best club forwards in Limerick aren't on the panel. All right, you have David Dempsey, Adrian Breen, Piercy, and myself out in the hand. All right, now, do you know what I mean? Between the 3.
I'm glad you smirked there after.
No,
what you were going to try and get away with.
but like I look at the club championship and I see those two boys, right? They're not on the panel.
Yeah.
Right? In old money in Limerick, they would have bar none been on a starting team. All right, that is there's guys like that who actually aren't on a panel. Do you know what I mean? And then you're coming down to like so Graham Mull wasn't on the match day panel yesterday. Davy Reedy, they've all to come back into it. So do you know what I mean? It's very hard. People say, "Oh, Kilkenny are tactically X, Y, and Z." If you don't have them, man, it's very, very hard to train. It's very hard to try and go with it. So that to me was probably one of the most worrying things for Kilkenny was maybe the nature of what they had to come off the line. They had, and that's not even against a team like Limerick. If they had to play a Wexford or a Galway in the morning, I don't think they just don't have them on the line that are going to really hurt you in that way. Like,
yeah, Richie Hogan, I think, broke a bone in his wrist today against Cork. Like they still really, really need those lads. They actually pulled, I think 5 of their under-20s from the under-20 championship the day before to take part in the league, and it worked against them on both counts because Wexford beat them in the under-20, and I presume they'll all be playing the next day. I presume Billy Drennan, Garrod, Dunn, Timmy Clifford and a few more will all be playing the next day, but it definitely worked against them anyway, and they would have a reasonably strong under-20 squad when they have everyone available to them. Just another interesting comment here from Hurling 1234 was at the match yesterday, Michael. Limerick plays such a blanket defence, analysing it up close. Be interesting to see how they would get on playing like other teams, as in, I don't think any teams play 15 on 15 now, but they do revert a lot of players quite deep now. Like Garrod Hegarty, when Limerick are attacking, yeah, he's on the front foot, maybe around the middle of the park, but when Limerick are defending, he's back at the 21 regularly. Peter Casey was the deepest lying corner forward of all time against Tipperary, I'd say, in the semi-final. Like, when they don't have the ball, nearly everybody filters back. They probably keep Flanagan, Gallan up, definitely, at least the two of those, but everyone else filters back, and then when they win the ball, they're able to move it at such a degree of pace, and because they've probably fallen back, there's so much space up there, and they can deliver that 70 or 80 yard ball at different stages.
yeah, I suppose, look, is there elements of football in it? Has there been, like, do you know what I mean? You look at the angles in which Limerick, when they win maybe primary possession, even off the puck out, like they're coming at angles to take the second receiver, whereas a lot of other teams, when they're moving the ball, transitioning the ball, if the ball on the second receiver, they're probably coming straight at it. Which, yeah, like you see football, like why do football, like you look at it when they're shooting, they're coming at angles the whole time to try and create space. And Limerick are very good at doing that when they're moving through that blanket defence, is what you said there, right? That's where, so that's where their movement and their ability to cut across. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like there is, look, you could have 12 behind the ball at times if the ball was slowed down on the attacking 50 for the opposition. Like, but one thing you mentioned there was about Aaron, right? Aaron is huge for that group. And I know people, he just allows a different kind of ball go in. Do you know what I mean? He allows that dirty ball go in. Like Flanagan has huge pace. If the ball goes to the flanks, Flanagan has that ability to turn, take you on, maybe come back around. But Aaron has that kind of route one element of it. And like, look at the goal yesterday came in, like a crossfield ball. Had we anybody else really that would probably always win that crossfield ball?
Yeah.
So, like, it's just, look, it's the nature. Somebody said it'd be interesting to see how they go 15 on 15. They'd win 15 on 15. That's the difference, all right? As in, like, this is a generational group. But, like, look at, I see him at club level here, Mike. Okay, I see, it's not trying to blow our own Tom Morrissey. The man is a one-man band here for us. He's keeping us maybe 2 levels above what we may be otherwise. Like, and it's just, he can play this game whatever way you give it to him. And I actually think a lot of those Limerick forwards, the dirtier it will be, the better actually a lot of them will be. It's only just that through the wisdom of their management, they are the sum of their parts plus 20% extra because of their cohesion. And I think, like, that's why if the game even did go a little bit different, Limerick still would have that aerial ability to go with teams like.
Yeah, and even, like, geez, if you put down a 50-50 ball on top of Burns as well, I thought Burns looked back to is getting back to his best yesterday. We have a comment in here just about Aaron Gallan. It just says, oh no, so just a different comment. He said he's basically rubbishing your Nicky Quaid theory and saying that if he went in goals, one stop auto, that they'd still win. Now I doubt it somehow, but someone just said about Aaron Gallan. Yeah, Aaron Gallan doesn't score ordinary league final goals. Obviously, referring back to that brilliant goal against Waterford in that league final, the flick goal in 2019. That was a beautiful goal yesterday, and he looks like a fella. He's obviously was away for whatever reasons. He's coming back now. He's literally getting better with every game and looks prime for championship now. That was his best performance, I'd say, yesterday by a mile since coming back. Looked dangerous at times, and as you say, when the ball goes in, even if it might not look like a dangerous ball, but he always looks dangerous. And even Pádraig Walsh was overcommitting at times because he's so afraid of him catching the ball as well. He really looks like a lad that's really coming back to the boil now and is prime for championship.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose there was elements of Aaron Gillen's goal against Cal Barton in the Munster final a couple of years ago. He's catching it from behind the whole time. And what do you do? Like, if you stand behind him, he's so big, he's going to win in front of you. If you go in front of him, he's sweeping it from behind. So, look, again, John like that, he let him suffer it out there the last couple of games when it wasn't going his way. And that's the interesting thing yesterday. Like, the probably guy that you just said was first maybe to be taken off for Limerick was probably Gearóid Hegarty. It wasn't going his way. It was just the frustration was creeping in. And as the game went on, Kylie took off everyone else. And like, would it have been the easy option for Kylie and Gearóid to say, hey, you know what, 50 minutes in, out you come, and Gearóid come back in 2 weeks' time and blow teams away, which he ordinarily does. But Kylie does an innate steal there, isn't there? I just think, Mike, that there's a steal there that we don't see. All right, John is so articulate in the way, but there's just a steal in how he deals with those issues. All right, he's smart, like he knows when to hold them, knows when to fold them. Even in field, in game, he's like Barry Murphy was probably taken off yesterday in a game whereby you said, look, he needs that bit of game time. That was John Kylie's way of saying, you may not be shaping up the way we want you to do it. Whereas he left on Gearóid because he knows that Gearóid will still be his go-to man. But he was saying, hey, you got to suffer it out here and find a way to get it right. And maybe as the game went on, there was a danger that Gearóid might have flicked out because of just frustration or whatever, but he didn't. And I suppose that would be a positive in itself for Limerick. So, look, I suppose, Mike, going forward, I suppose, look, the league is over. You're 2 weeks out against Waterford. There will be a day when we'll be under pressure. There'll be 2 days when we'll be under pressure and things will go against you. A referee decision will go against you. And who knows, like the apocalypse there, Nicky Quaid might make a mistake one day and we might leave in a soft goal. But for now, I just think they're so strong at the moment. And look, if I was in the opposing dressing room, I'd love to be hearing everyone feeding this frenzy. I just think for a team to beat them, they'll be ranked close. Trust me, there'll be a lot of close shaves and it'll be an interesting championship. But I think for a team to beat them, no. But one thing, Mike, and again, maybe I'm having it, I just see the legacy growing before our eyes. I've seen a lot of sports people would have read James Kerr's book, Legacy, and I suppose a lot of those 15 cultural elements would have been integrated in dressing rooms across various sports over a lot of years. But one thing that this spoke about for the Maoris was kind of be the tree you'll never see. And I suppose what I mean by that then is like by creating that culture and that ability to always win against the grain and carry yourself the way you do, that there is a generation of Limerick players coming up there now that have never known anything else. Like I went down to the game there with Ollie's brother and his young lad nephew, and he's inside after going into this academy system there now, and we're trying to tell him about the shite that went on when we were there. And Oswald having the shite there a lot of the time, or you know what I mean? But like there was things that happened, like, and at the time we were cringing, and now when you look back at the standards that were there, and you're just there, oh merciful God. And he's there, you're telling lies there, like, as in, this doesn't happen. He's inside in a setup where they're telling him what to eat before he goes to bed the night of training, and this kind of crack, like, and that is the one thing, like, the longer this goes on, the more that Limerick will now move into what will be known as the top 4. Like, we always think of traditionalists, we think of the top 3 of Cork, Tipp, Kilkenny. All right, there was a time up to the late 30s that Limerick would have been considered one of the real strong elite hurling counties. And then for 80 years, it kind of went awry for the greater part. And I just think that is the one thing I've seen before our eyes there is just everything is building for the next generation. And I'd be interested to know the first manager, the first team to win a county post the John Kiley era. And that'll be the greatest legacy that they leave, in the sense that All-Ireland that they might win in 10 years' time, when this management, quite possible, looking at Brian Cody, it's quite possible Kiley be here in 15 years' time, but as in, that'll really be the thing. And like one of the other elements of yesterday, right? Colin O'Neill was brilliant. He may not have been on this. I don't even think Colin scored yesterday.
He got 1 point, Jay. Got 1 before half time, yeah.
I actually thought Colin was brilliant yesterday. And ordinarily he scored 4 or 5 points and he had a great game. I just thought he was really, really good. I thought Colin Coughlin has really grown. And one thing that always pissed me off, it did, okay, was we were going up, and I'm just taking isolation of what we were, because I can't speak for other counties like yourself and Offaly or whoever, but you were as good as Kilkenny boys always at 18. You were playing against them at colleges level. You played against them at Fitz level. You knew you were as good as X, Y, and Z. You knew it like that. You weren't. And all of a sudden, between the ages of 20 and 24, they went to a different planet. And we plateaued and in most cases regressed. Whereas this is what I see with Limerick the whole time. They're getting better and better and better and better. And even the great guys are getting better. And that is probably the scariest thing, that this is the legacy that is being left behind.
Is that all in the planning, really, even academy planning of getting lads through, but also feeding into the fact that they're going to stay developing, and you're not going to plateau? Is that kind of what you mean, maybe?
Look, I can't speak for the academy because I've never been directly involved, unfortunately. But I suppose, look, anecdotally, I suppose when you talk to lads the club lads here, lads in school, like, you just see him, you see that development in him between straight in the academy element. Now, if we take that, okay, that's whatever you're talking, 14 to 17 or 18. You can see it in how they wear the school uniforms compared to other lads. As in, you can just see it coming out of them. So that culture, like, the way they eat their lunches. If you're talking about the kids now element of it, right? I see the way they eat their lunches, what they eat, how they wear their gear for training. I just see that it's in a real professional level. Okay, so what you were saying is, okay, how does that feed in at senior level? I suppose the fact that there's no ego, there's no bullshit. All right, and I suppose ego is the root of all. Do you know what I mean? I suppose when ego comes into a dressing room, I suppose Alex Ferguson was the king of it. When ego came into the dressing room, he got rid of the ego. All right, and there is no ego in them. I suppose there's that growth set mentality the whole time, that they can be better and they're looking for more the whole time. And what I see now, Mike, as well, then, all right, you're coming back to club level, like, and these boys are driving the clubs. Do you know what I mean? They're absolutely, like Kildimo, for instance, they're a top 6 team in Limerick. Kildimo, I'd say maybe 12 years ago, I said it could be possibly Junior B. Where is that coming from? Who's the driver on that? Sure, there's only one man doing that, like, you know. That's Kyle. So that is the legacy thing that they're building, and do you know what I mean? That's the most pleasing aspect, I suppose, as for what I've been out going forward, Limerick fan, that's the most pleasing aspect.
Yeah, there's a comment in here just saying, from Patrick Coleman, Sheedy last night made a comment at the end with a bit of a smile about the championship and someone catching Limerick. I think he had Tipperary in mind. Given Tipperary have obviously faded out against Limerick at different stages over the last couple of years, and I don't think they've beaten Limerick. Definitely Kylie's last 5 years anyway. Clare obviously put it up to them several times last year. I think where they are now has probably been coloured by the All-Ireland semi-final last year, and maybe even that Limerick game in the Gaelic grounds this year as well. But, like, while we take the league final in isolation yesterday, Limerick are going to get it shoved up to them at several stages during Munster. And I think from, the opposition's point of view, I think probably the key thing, and this sounds a bit mad, but if you're going to beat them, you probably want to beat them in a knockout game where you're not going to have to face them again. But there's plenty of hurdles. It's not like, looking back at Munster last year, there was a lot of tight scrapes. Tipp was a tight scrape. There was obviously a draw with Clare, another draw with Clare, came from behind against Cork. And they are playing as well as they have in the last 4 or 5 years, but they're not going to waltz through Munster like maybe a lot of people think they are. Well, I don't think they are anyway. They're definitely going to have plenty of speed bumps along the way.
Well, I suppose the one thing you see it in the stand yesterday, there's a lot of, some of the Limerick supporters are getting carried away. There's a bit of fist pumping and whatever else, and they're kind of cringing a little bit because they're saying, don't be giving them ammo here, like, all right? I think rise levels, all right? And like, you look at the 3 games, most final right through to the All-Ireland, Limerick were under, do you know what I mean? It's okay, they rode out the pressure, but like, didn't take a whole pile for, as I said, one mistake when you were 3 points down to go 6, 7 points down. Now teams can put men behind the ball, and now it might become a little bit easier for them. So you're asking who's best prime maybe to take them on. Tipperary have a very good team coming. I just think they're about 3 players short of getting a group that can go 70 minutes with Limerick. All right, they're still, like, Noel McGrath is still the wizard there pulling the strings. You know what I mean? Even Bonner Maher's come back to incredible form this year when you might have said otherwise. But 75 or 80 minutes of that at that level, like, John, there's only so much you can expect them to do as well. Clare are an interesting one. They're the one team that have found extra on what they had last year. All right, they found more, and even like Shane Amori coming back into this further bolstering them. I question what they really gave to the league. I saw them against Galway out in Ennis. Do you know what I mean? I thought Galway swatted them away a lot easier than what they should have. I thought today against Limerick, I just watching them, the defence organising themselves throughout the game. They looked like a team who hadn't put a whole pile of thought into playing Limerick that day. They're an interesting one. They're an interesting one. But it's, as you said, will teams hold off on the round robin side of it? I don't mean hold off, right? Will teams go at it? We often say it there, Mike, right? As in, you telling a young lad to mark her back. I says, get close to him or get fucking close to him. It's a bit like that, all right? We'll have a go at him or we'll have a fucking go at him, all right? But the thing about it is in championship, when you have that real go at them, it softens you for the game that's coming thereafter. And I think that's probably the price that Clare paid last year, that unbeknownst to them, it just had knocked the real stuff out of them to get to that level. So if there is a team to take him, Mike, hey, it may not even be a Munster final. There might be 2 games to do it, a semi or a final, and I think maybe it's like Cheltenham is for everyone else to ride out the each way bets. Then after that, like, you know.
Yeah, they actually haven't been beaten in a final under John Kiley as well, which is outstanding, really, when you look at it. I think that's including Munster League, Munster, and the All Ireland Championship. Just one question I want to throw at you now, just before I let you go, and it's been a few people have asked this in a different type of way. Hurling 1234 just says, Niall, if you play well at club level in Limerick, do you get rewarded? For example, Dempsey and Breen, Ronan Lynch, I think, has played class at club level. Same with Andrew Latouche Cosgrave and Marco Dwyer. Obviously, Donegal O'Donnell's, ascension into the ranks would say that you do get rewarded, but have you seen that, or like
100%.
should there be more than Pearse Street players in there?
100%. John Kiley watches club games and rewards them, and in the instance actually Donegal O'Donnell, was amazing. Like Donegal O'Donnell, really, he was in the 20s last year. He wouldn't have been standout. I'm not going to be disingenuous. He wouldn't have been a standout player. Okay. And I remember going to the intermediate final, and just happened that John was in beside me, and I wasn't talking shop about Limerick, but I knew by him, and just a couple of things he said about Donegal, and like that particular intermediate final, because Mark Dwyer was a standout player by a mile in that intermediate final, probably throughout that intermediate campaign. By the way, Mark Dwyer was called in and he was injured. So
that's right, yeah. He was injured in the club final, wasn't he?
Yeah. Two players only coming back. In the case of Dempsey, and like David Dempsey had a bit of an injury last year. Adrian Breen had been in there, so it wasn't that they weren't in there. All right, that they weren't in there, but he had, like, I was saying, you knew by Kylie he'd major time for Donegal O'Donnell. He saw something in him, and I wouldn't have seen it in him only for what the run that Moline would have went on later on in the year. So he's 100% in tune. And our own club there, we've got Kieran Barry that went in. That's the one thing, Mike. That's another scary thing, right? And I referenced this guy in our club, Kieran Barry. He's a guy that played 1 year at under 20 for Limerick, and probably today he played. I think he might have marked Shane Barrett, didn't just go his way. But a real ambitious kind of a guy, professional guy. He went out of his way during lockdown. I mean, now went to a level physically and everything else with a view to making this county panel, and had a great year with us for the club. He was called into that panel in old money. Didn't matter what he'd done, because we weren't contesting at the latter stage of the championship. He was never going to be brought in. But Kiley is watching it. And another thing here is, in terms of guys that don't get called in, chances are there might be a flaw in their character. All right?
Yeah.
And his character is the essence of it. And I suppose, again, going back to what I said about the Ferguson thing, no ego in the dressing room. Do you know what I mean? He's in the position now where he can weed him out. But to be fair to him, he probably weeded him out from day one. And weed out is a wrong kind of word, all right? Weed out, because it's not that guys are bad guys, all right? But if there was any element of petulance or a little element of self-obsession or whatever it might be deemed as, if Kiley just didn't read your character, if you just had that little doubt about it, you weren't getting the gallop on it. And even in this nature of some of the things, different things that have happened, and he's defending guys and whatever else, he still sees something in their characters, even though there might be a flaw in them. All right, just because you're flawed, it doesn't mean that you're out the door. All right, everyone is flawed. There's flaws in all of us, and you'll always look for the betterment of it. But if he sees something that he can't iron out, that he knows will upset the dynamic of the group, then you don't become part of that group, irrespective of what you've done at underage in county or colleges or club or whatever. So, again, there is the doors always open for club players. Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes back to Kiley, the Moontor, Kiley, the principal, I'd say, as well, because I'm sure down in the Abbey and other places he's been, you try and iron out kinks in different kids, and you do your best, and most of the time it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. Now, before I let you go, top 3 in Munster and the top 3 in Leinster.
Top three in Munster, I would say Clare, Cork, Waterford in that order, right? And in terms of
good man. Never
start,
the Clare lads might even get a chance to respond.
I'm going to say I just still think there's a cut in Galway. I think there's a kick in Galway. Right? Today they played Limerick. If they pushed up a little bit more, a bit earlier, I think they possibly would have turned Limerick over in Pearse Stadium. I genuinely believe that. So I do think I'd say Galway or Kilkenny are still going to be there, and the other couple have been cut adrift. Do you know what I mean? Offaly possibly in third place, even though they're in a different competition. You're on the way back. Look strong for me back in Leinster. Just another thing there as well, while we're on about it. I suppose the news broke yesterday in the Sunday game, Mike, about the death of the young lad David Brown there above in Port or whatever. And Jesus, thinking there, it just 15-year-old out in the quad. We're farming here at home, and like that, the nephews would be driving the quad, they'd be trying to bring in the cows for you or whatever else. And do you know what I mean? It'd sink, wouldn't it? It'd sink you too, that just to see that. So as much as we're looking at it, there was his brother was involved in Laois, had a fine win yesterday in football, and at the same time, do you know what I mean, earlier that day or whatever else, that poor chap died. And I suppose another note, and I don't know if sound bites in this picked up, but the Dylan Quirk thing, man, if the GA go and do not allow Tipp and Limerick to play in the Dylan Quirk Foundation jerseys, all right, I'm sick shite of some particular people in administration, not all, some particular people in administration, and who are so far adrift from what goes on the ground, be it with player welfare that we're seeing across, even I know the Cavan ladies had an issue with player welfare, like in terms of the camogie, in terms of scheduling an all-star tour for the week of championship. This issue with Dylan Quirk, just the foundation, like, are they for real? Like, we're in an organisation that sometimes struggles for, they call it grab all association, and yet when we try to do this huge thing, like, I mean, Dylan Quirk, even if he's a young lady, actually worked here, did a little bit of work, won't even get into it, and just fucking top guy. The people at Clonody are devastated after it. If this can allow cardiac screening to take place for young lads and prevent one child being killed, they're fucking wound up in their administrative loophole. I know here in our local club there 2 or 3 years ago, we carried a logo by our own choice of Castlecannon Montpellier Cancer Group. If there's anyone listening there, if you have a spare few bobs, throw it towards them. But how much they went around supporting local people here, unbeknownst to everybody who were suffering, family members suffering from cancer, and what that meant to them. Like, we gave them a few bob, a couple of €100, but what the actual exposure meant to them. And do you know what I mean? Then we have a situation where we have people in power. I cannot fathom how somebody can tell you that carrying a logo of a cancer group will take away from how they raise their own publicity, or somebody would want to be the face behind the GA and come out and say, well, why this is taken. Because to stand behind the umbrella of the GA, the umbrella of the GA is the clubs, the kids, the parents, the families, the schools, everything else. And I'm under that umbrella of the GA, no different to you, Mike, and all your listeners. And I'll tell you one thing, they want to get back off their high horse there, and those two teams better be wearing those jerseys and allow the rest of us to try and pump and put a few bob in behind that foundation, because that is what the GA is about, win, lose or draw. And when there's 82,000 people in Croke Park this year's All-Ireland final, let us raise more publicity around it and do what the GA is about and what kind of really characterises who we are.
100%, Jez. You have me goose pimples. I'd love to know what you're like in the dressing room before a match. Well, I have a fair idea from looking at that video with the Art School Reach boys, actually, when you went into the dressing room after.
Yeah.
Niall, thanks a million for that. Totally echo those sentiments. Like, that is what the GA is all about, supporting our own. So hopefully some sort of resolution can come with the Dylan Quirk Foundation and the lads will be able to carry the logos, because it'd be great exposure for the foundation. And as you say, if that foundation will save lives. So thanks a million for your time, Niall. Really appreciate it this morning. And we'll talk to you soon, no doubt.
Good bit of farm work, Mike.
Good man. Mind yourself, Niall. Thanks a million. Delighted to say I have Carl Craig waiting in the background here. Apologies for keeping you waiting, Carl. How are you?
Good now. How are you keeping?
You're a happy man this morning, I'd say, waking up on this Easter Monday morning. I can't say the Rossies are back, because they were never gone based on their form this year, but fantastic performance yesterday to take down your Connacht rivals Mayo.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I suppose going over to Castlebar, I would have tipped Mayo last week, just based on the form that they had the last couple of weeks. As you said, Roscommon had a very good league, but like Mayo had been very strong going into the game. So yeah, very good win for Roscommon.
just like Davy Burke has gotten some bounce out of Roscommon. The first 3 league wins almost had Division 1 status secured. Obviously finished off with a win as well. He kind of intimated yesterday that he tinkered with his defensive system after the first 3 games, maybe with a view to playing Mayo, and so that they wouldn't see them. They wouldn't see what they were going to do. It kind of like their defensive structure yesterday was so solid. They were top class. It just didn't allow Mayo any space. Maybe outside of that Cohen goal chance, remember Aidan O'Shea going through, and there's just bodies converging everywhere. From a Roscommon point of view and a Roscommon supporter now that you are, that must have been a joy to watch.
Yeah, it was very good. I think look at a lot of the what yesterday was just down to desire. Like as you said, like their work rate and their tackling was unbelievable yesterday. We didn't even see that in the league, you know, in some of the games, and I think they'll be very, very happy with that. Another thing there yesterday was around, you know, I would have thought going over, Mayo started all the league games really well. Roscommon actually in most of their games, even the ones they won, they would have started quite poorly. And like it was definitely a tactic that Roscommon employed yesterday. They just seemed to just take the ball and keep the ball for a long period of time, and it'll never let Mayo get into the game at all. And then anytime Mayo got the ball, they just their work rate, as I said, and their tackling was very disciplined as well, I thought.
Yeah, and it has been under Davy, in fairness, really disciplined. I think the Rhino Donoghue have one free for a long stage. Like they just didn't cough up scoring chances. I know Davy Burke always talks about 75% of the scoring chances coming from in or around the D or inside, and they kind of denied Mayo so many chances in around there. As you say, real well disciplined defending. Obviously,
and that's probably one of the areas that Roscommon over the last maybe 5 or 10 years have been maybe poorer in, you know, that they've conceded a lot of goals, particularly against better teams throughout the league. And yesterday, you know, Mayo only scored 10 points yesterday. Roscommon, I think, throughout the league only conceded 3 goals. Mayo would have conceded 7, I think. So they, you know, defensively they definitely have improved, but they are playing a more defensive game and a more possession based game.
It's when you come up against, like Roscommon have probably suffered, and even in your own day, some maybe heavy enough defeats in, you know, Croke Park games, shall we say. They look like they're set up to be a lot more compact, a lot tighter, maybe less exposed when it comes to those type of games. I know the lads on the Sunday game last night were wondering, you know, how would they cope in Croke Park when it's more of a kicking game, but they definitely look a lot more compact and a lot harder to break down.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose back a number of years ago, we were playing, you know, we were scoring a lot more. We were probably scoring, you know, 17, 20 points or scores in all games. But there was teams scoring 4 or 5 goals against us, like, which was nearly a waste of time then, you know. So we're scoring less, but we're definitely conceding less. And look at when you're not conceding goals and maybe getting 1 or 2. Roscommon has scored a decent amount of goals all through the year. You're in with a chance, like.
You've probably seen the Dubs do it, and you've probably been on the field when the Dubs were doing it and they're holding on to the ball. How satisfying is that to see it when Roscommon were so good at holding on to the ball, so like killing the game at different stages? To see them being almost so comfortable in that kind of skin must have been a delight to see. Like, because usually if the opposition team are doing it, you're kind of sickened and you just want the lad to press up and try and take the ball back. But when it's your own county doing it, I'd imagine it's pretty enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it was nervy enough now at times. Like, you know, it is sort of edge of the seat stuff at the same time. They're playing it a lot. They're obviously playing the extra player as being the keeper, and coming out a wet day like yesterday. It's not easy to play that, and they probably lived on the edges once or twice in terms of they got turned over and they could have got a goal. But look at it, it worked out, and as I said, it was a brilliant win, and not many would have expected it.
Davey kind of said that he thought there was maybe a bit of disrespect shown to Roscommon. They obviously finished 3rd in the league. Technically, you know, the 3rd best team throughout the spring. Did you get that, or was it just a case of Mayo had another game, they won a league final, you know, there was lots of hoopla around it, that they were always going to be kind of, not heavy favourites, but that they're always going to be the team that had a lot of focus on them coming into the game? Did you feel any element of Roscommon being disrespected going into the game?
No, I wouldn't have, because I would have met, you know, lots of Mayo people during the week, and they would have giving Roscommon a good chance going into the game. I don't think any of them expected to go down and hammer Roscommon or anything like that. The league, I'm not sure the league form were fully representative of where Everton was at as well. Like Mayo finished first, Roscommon finished third. So the game in the Hyde as well, Roscommon nearly pipped that as well, the one in the league game. Mayo on that day, there was 3 or 4 stages throughout that game where they could have kicked on and maybe bet Roscommon by 6 or 7 or 8 points, but they just probably weren't able to get away from them. And I think that has been a theme in all Roscommon's games throughout the league, is that they've never let any team kind of, I suppose, get away from them, even when they haven't been playing well in some of them games. They've always stuck in, like down in Kerry and that Mayo game. They're probably the two that come to mind most. Mayo and Kerry dominated them, but they were still within, like, coming to the last play of the game, they had 2 goal chances in both them games to get something out of the game.
Yeah. Have you heard much anecdotally, Carl, about what Davy Burke has brought to the table, and obviously Mark McHugh's in there as coach as well. He's a very passionate guy, Davy, but he really knows his football. He had a show on our channel last year with him and Enda Vardy. Real passionate football man, like eats and sleeps that he'd be watching every bit he could possibly get his hands on. Have you heard much about what he's bringing to the table? Obviously, apart from that organisation that we talked about.
No, actually, to be honest, round it's very quiet. There's very little sound bites coming out. Like, obviously, it's very positive among the supporters and all that. Like, to get 8 points in Division 1 league and get a first win against Mayo in his first game as championship. That's probably the best year so far that Roscommon have had. In the last 20, 30 years, realistically, because even back in 2019 when we won it, we were probably unlucky to get relegated on the last day, but we did end up getting relegated. I think we got 5, 6 points. To get 8 points in Division 1, you have to be very competitive in a lot of games, and then to go down to Castlebar and win against a good Mayo team, it's fair going,
What is it about the idea of Mayo winning the league that you just love beating them anytime they win the league?
I know. I only seen that stat there during the week. It's a mad one. I don't know. It's and it's the last twice has been down there. I don't know. Maybe at them times, the couple of times they won at Roscommon have been, I suppose, stronger maybe than the other years. But look, I think probably for Mayo as well going into the game yesterday, I think the preparation was difficult. Like, there's no doubt about it. They had only the 7-day turnaround. I was doing a bit there yesterday before the game, and realistically, they probably had 1 or 2 sessions maximum to prepare for the game, whereas Roscommon had 3 weeks, because they were more or less safe after the Kerry game, and they had the Donegal game in between, but it didn't matter really. That was a dead rubber game basically for both teams, and Roscommon had to go to 3 weeks, which is probably 9 or 10 weeks. You can do weekend sessions and everything there. So they had probably 9 or 10 sessions prepared for that game and get really up for it. And Mayo, after winning, no matter how much you try and quell that, it is hard to get down from that, and you're listening. There's a lot of media stuff, and then there's the build up for the game and that. So it's that was definitely a tough one on Mayo for the game yesterday.
Yeah, I don't enjoy the structure of that at all. I think you should be able to celebrate a success. I think it's a bit mad that they come out and play a big game again a week later. And even from a Roscommon point of view, the Roscommon were getting another look at Mayo. Do you know what I mean? Getting another look at what way they were playing and that type of thing. It sets up a fairly juicy semi-final against Galway by all accounts.
Yeah, that'll be a cracking game, and I think Galway are building up nicely. They showed spells of it last weekend against Galway, and they've a few players to come back into that. McDade, Shane Walsh is only sort of starting to get going again. I would say he's not near his max, because he was with Kilmacud, and then he was away for a period of time. But I think give him another couple of weeks, he'll be very strong. Comer's obviously just coming back. Another couple of weeks will make a big difference for him. Obviously Johnny Heaney went off at that time, so I think when they get them few players back in, they finished second in the league. They played well, and there's been very little talk about them. They're probably I actually probably fancy them maybe to go on and win the All Ireland. I think they're very strong. And I just like the way they're going about things. But look, at saying that, no more than yesterday's game, any time Roscommon and Galway have played over the last 8 or 9 years, I'd say it's probably 50-50 in terms of the results. It's nearly every second year they beat each other. That's kind of the way it has been. So it's it'll be very tight.
You've done a good job of building them up anyway. I'm just going to bring in Declan Bogue here from the 42, who was there covering the game actually yesterday. Declan, how are you getting on?
Very good. Michael,
how are you doing?
Just a quick deck from a Mayo point of view. Where to now for Mayo? Like, it's mad to say that defeating the Connacht Championship might nearly be a blessing in disguise as regards their preparation now going into the All Ireland Championship. It's kind of mad to say that, but that's kind of the facts of the matter.
Well, Cal he'll know exactly what we're talking about here. I just think, like, if you detach yourself from, and this is not something that the players talk about or what the management would even want, but Mayo, whether they like it or not, are a soap opera. And following them as a soap opera and everything about them is just ramped up to the nth degree. And 6 weeks, possibly 7, depending on the way the draw works out, I think it's the best place for them because they're out of the national glare. They're able to do what they want. They can actually take a down week now, even 10 days off completely, which might be the best possible thing. I was just leaving the stadium yesterday and noticed Killian O'Connor leaving, and he was leaving on his own in a pair of recovery trousers. And that isn't the sort of look of a man who is heading for skinful. It looks like a man who's maybe focused on things further down the road. But I actually, look at, it's the brand new world. It's the new championship that we have. Someone was going to get this big break, and nobody kind of maybe, I suppose, of course, Roscommon went in absolutely level pagans there yesterday, but nobody kind of expected that Mayo might have been the team to fall, or the first team to think, well, what are we going to do with ourselves for the summer? I think it's going to be a better thing for them.
Yeah, it could be in a roundabout way. It's mad. We were talking about the death knell of the provincial championships, and I saw you did a piece in the 42, Declan, with this. But I'll throw this over to you, Cotton. Like, you've played over in New York a few times, but the scenes there on Saturday night were something else, really, weren't they?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I stayed up to watch it. It was cracking stuff. Like, there was no more than, I think, 2 points in it at any stage. It was brilliant viewing. I was watching it in here. I was wrecked all day yesterday because I was up so late watching it. But like, there was everything in it, like even down to the penalties. 2 of them off the crossbar, 1 off the post. Like, it was savage entertainment. Look, I only from a Connacht point of view, and I think probably definitely the Ulster Championship. Maybe the other two mightn't be as competitive. But you see, I seen the highlights last night of Clare and Cork game. Like, Clare were delighted to win that game. It's like, I'm not sure that the provincial championships will be gone, because bar maybe 2 or 3 teams, it's the only realistic chance that teams have of winning national or silverware throughout the year. Your Roscommons, Galway, Mayo, like, they haven't won All Ireland for a long time. So to get silverware, it's one of the main objectives at the start of the year. Well, it always was when I was playing, anyways.
Definitely, yeah. There's only a couple of competitions that you can win. Just a quick one, Deck, on that game in the Bronx. Like, even Johnny Glynn was that fatigued from his efforts. He was just hugging someone on the sideline while everyone else was running onto the pitch. Like, that's the real. I think it's their 23rd time lucky. It's on the chat. It was the first day of the championship, and it's kind of lit up the championship already.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic for them and all the different people involved over there. And it's New York's win, but it's also a win in some ways for London, and it's a win for anyone who's involved in promoting games out foreign lands, like people in Australia and the sandpits of the Middle East and all those places. Like, because there are people that go and live and work in these communities, and all of a sudden then they're involved in a GA club. And they're doing unbelievable things, like, and they're really progressive. Like, if you look at the clubs, some of the clubs over there, like Rockland and that, they're standalone places with their own facilities and all. It's just astonishing what goes on. So, in terms of football side of it, like, it was always probably going to happen, but at the same time, like, you know, you'd be thinking it might happen in a year where Leitrim or Sligo might be down around position 5, 6 of the National League in Division 4 and maybe only picked up 1 or 2 wins. Leitrim were coming in there looking actually good. And the whole kind of narrative that we spring up now is that shocks don't happen, i.e., an Antrim can never catch an Armagh. We'll get to that like in a bit. But because the teams are too organised and there's just too many processes and they're just too cute and they're too much in tune with what is going on and how to kill the game and all that. And we saw an awful lot of that in Castlebar. But like looking back over the highlights at the same time, Leitrim left an absolute flood of goals behind them. Like, and there could have been a penalty shot for your guy, the corner back at the very end. But there's no doubt about it. Like there's just something incredibly picturesque about that place in the Bronx, and I think that they changed the camera angle this time for it to show a more sort of a wilder scene, you know, that especially that fence up around the baseball sort of background there. Absolutely fantastic for everyone involved, and like, you know, there's people like Joan Henchy, even Larry McCarthy himself, like, and by God, they have put their life's work into New York GA, and it's great to see it.
And it's great to see even Shane Carty on the Sunday game last night standing outside some pub with a lot of construction in the background. It was good to see even that modern media has moved on and they were able to get somebody like that after a game, because it's such a big thing. Like, and it might,
do you remember
I think as well though, like you were talking about Leitrim there, like to be fair to Leitrim, like that was a very strong New York team. Like, if you go, it's just definitely the strongest team they've had for probably ever, I would say. You know, like the Johnny Glynn, Mark Ellis, Shane Carty, Varley from Galway, Owen Cairns from Galway, Bill Maher from Tipperary. Like, that's just to name a few of them. Like, they had really, really a good side, and they played well on the night. Like, their fitness levels were unbelievable right up until the end. The one thing I would say from both sets of players is that, like, coming towards the end, there was obviously a lot of mistakes, but Jesus, they put everything on the line. Like, those lads going down with cramp. Like, it's a tough game over there. Like, I've played it a few times. It's not an easy place to go. Like, your preparation is so different. You're expected to win. It's not an easy one. Like, you know, so
tell me,
it's not simple. It's not simple on Leitrim, you know.
When you go out there to play in New York, Cahill, what's your mindset like? Is there a great deal of nervousness? Because, you know, even
it's just really trying to get over it. Like, you know, you just want to go over and win the game. Like, you know, I played over there 3 times. The first time was actually under John Mahon. So we had it tight for maybe 50-55 minutes, and we kicked on. That was actually, I made my debut that day. And the second time then was 2011. We'd actually lost the Division 4 final the week before to Longford, and then we went out and we sort of blew them out of the water in the first 10 or 15 minutes. And then the last in 16 then was the time that was tight. You know, it was actually kind of similar to the game the last night. We missed a load of goal chances. The first maybe half, I think we had 5 very good goal chances. Vinny Cadden was in goals from Sligo, and he was man of the match actually. And you know, we left them in it, and they kicked on, and it was only a point or two on the finish. Like, you know, it was nervy stuff. Like, you know, you're not going to get anything for winning it. Like, you know, you're not going to get any plaudits. It's just a matter of doing it. But the other thing then with you were talking about the work that goes on out there. I work with Connacht GA, and we're linked with them, and I'm actually going out this weekend delivering some coach education courses out there. But you couldn't underestimate the amount of work that New York and the people out there do. You know, there's 2 full-time officers out there working hurling and football. You know, they came home and won a colleges tournament the Sigerson weekend there.
That's
you know,
right.
they'll have a team coming home for Fela. They've a hurling and a football team. They've actually a hurling and football team coming home for both Felas, and they've a hurling and football team coming home under 17 as well. Them weekends as well. So like that takes serious effort and time from them out there. And I know I'll be doing a few sessions with their squads this weekend as well. But like their Fela team that'll be coming home, like they could have players traveling 2 hours plus to training, you know, on 2 or 3 times a week. So it's brilliant what the Irish community do over there. Like,
I think you might have picked the wrong weekend to go out. Now there'll still be a carryover, all right. But I'd say the last weekend would have been better. I'll just leave you on this one.
I'm not able for that anymore.
Like us all. I'll leave you on this one, Cotton, and let you go then. They face Sligo obviously in the semi-final. Like if you look at Sligo and Leitrim last year when they met in the Tailteann Cup, I think it was penalties that Sligo won, and there wouldn't be that much between them based on Division 4 standings. There wouldn't be that much between them either. Like, is there any chance of another shock?
Look, there's always a chance. Like New York have a good team. Like, you know, they've good players the whole way through, and they've some good players on the bench as well. Now I do think Sligo will beat them. You know, they'll be at home. New York will have to do the travelling this time, so that's another factor on them. The game will be on grass, and Sligo have been going well the last couple of weeks too. They probably had a pour out in the first day against Laois, I think, and they've really kicked into gear since that. And I think the momentum will be with them, and they had probably a tricky one going to London at the weekend, and they won it fairly comprehensively after winning the league final the week before. So I'd be expecting that Sligo will win that. Good
man, Cottle. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. I appreciate it, and okay. There could be the Rossies are waiting in the long grass in the semi-final again, no doubt. Thanks,
Thanks
a million. Good man. Thanks a million. Great to have Cottle Craig there. He's not. I thought he might be under the weather this morning. They might be enjoying it, but they're obviously focused on the semi-final deck. Just a couple of other quick bits and pieces from Castlebar. Any other bits of takeaways from it? By all accounts, Kevin McStay wasn't, completely downbeat in the aftermath either. I have to say he's a breath of fresh air as regards media dealings, and even just his general demeanour and attitude towards the media is refreshing. But they were in a difficult spot, as Cottle said, playing a week after a league final. I still think there's a big run in them, and I think they'll have a big say in where Sam Maguire goes at the end of the year.
Well, number one about Kevin is you can't spend that long in the media, and by that in the media, like, I mean, even going back to his Sunday game punditry career, like he was writing columns for obviously his Irish Times columns have been very well received, but like before that, even the stuff that he had in the Mayo News, like he had just years and years of columns in the Mayo News, and I used to keep an eye out for them every week because they're so well written, so well thought out, and like everything, he's got an engineering and an army background. So I mean, it's Benny O'Brien, one of the selectors with St. Bridget, said to me last week, everything is noughts or ones. It's either 0 or 1, and it can't be one or the other, and you can rationalize. So with him is you don't spend that long dealing with the media, working in the media, without then developing some kind of respect for what the role is, and then stripping away the paranoia, knowing what is actually applicable, what works, what doesn't work here. Mayo weren't exactly hugely in the media in the run-up to the game. I don't think that's a big thing anymore. I actually think that other teams are media outlets in general aren't even looking for the big sit-down with a star player because it doesn't happen. Davy Burke was, though. You'll notice that, like Davy Burke was speaking to Michael Foley in the Sunday Times Sunday morning. Did it affect Roscommon? It didn't do any damage. But apart from that, yes, his general demeanour, he's a positive fella anyway, right? We know that he doesn't do tragic comedy or anything like that, and he's bound to put a positive spin on it straight away. I mean, that's his job there. He is there. He'll not get carried away. He'll not he'll not want to dial up the drama in Mayo because he knows that that's something that they've been trapped in a cycle of for many, many years. And I don't know. I just think it suits him. I forgive me for if I'm completely wrong and people will say momentum, blah, 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 all that. I just think now that they have a glorious opportunity to go away and be very honest with themselves and do whatever work they want to. They will be coming back into that round robin series, absolutely leaping out of their skin and mad for football, and not having had that high and low emotional roller coaster of even meeting Galway. Could you imagine now Mayo's like already, like the feeling they had coming back down the road in a bus? You know yourself, you can be hoteled and bussed out of it like in the middle of a season, and this is one season that is going to happen to a lot of teams. Is traveling to and from games and all that. They don't need that. They can take themselves away out of it. It'll be a nice wee seed. Not quite sure where exactly they fit into the seeds, but they'll get through it. They'll not be the fourth team to be knocked out in their group. So it's fallen kind of in their favour in the same way as I actually think the Dublin are All Ireland favourites for a very different reason. Is they'll have a nice run and they have loads of games, but they'll have loads of games to bed in. The Jack McCaffrey, Paul Mannion, Conor Callahan, get that whole teamwork going again with them. And of course, as we found out last week, they've got the wonderful advantage of playing 2 of their 3 games at home in Croke Park.
Good man. I was actually chatting to John Kiley after the league final yesterday, and
Yeah.
you know, the question was thrown to him. You know, does any part do you think like that? Maybe you're going too well too soon, or you know, winning the league, is that a disadvantage? And I think Kevin McStay is the same. I don't think you think about those things. I don't think McStay would have thought about, oh, it's okay if we lose. They would have been going gung-ho to win yesterday. And now this is the scenario that they're in. It's plan B almost. But we've seen Mayo been able to go through plan A, B, C, D, E, the whole way through the qualifiers in recent years. Like in 17, I think, when they produced probably their best ever All-Ireland final performance, that 117 to 116 game. Like, I think Derry nearly beat them along the way. Clare give them trouble, I think, along the way as well. You know, so they know, and this is going to be the most attritional All-Ireland Football Championship of all time, would be fair to say. We don't know what's around the corner, only a hell of a lot of games, and there is going to be some amount of games to win All-Ireland just from the All-Ireland stages onwards, let alone win your provincial.
Well, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's, Jesus, like I was thinking there coming home yesterday, like imagine that was do or die, and that was the end of Mayo all summer, like, and that was a cruel thing. And it got more and more cruel because it was especially hard for the teams that were routinely cannon fodder of, such as my own county, like Fermanagh, that, you know, really you'd see people gathering up, and with such a ridiculous system, like of a league game in October. Like, I mean, remember Kerry playing Louth and getting beat by Louth in what was it? Was it 13 days or something after the All-Ireland final replay in 2000?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, asking boys, can you come out and play for Kerry again on a Saturday night? Or it was a Sunday against Louth.
You do well to get them to play the goal challenge match 3 or 4 days after while they're still hanging from Porter.
Well, that's it. But that was then training started, and you're going from September right the way through, and then you get to May, and you get your 1 day out and hammer out the gate or beat out the gate, and not knowing how can we do to improve, because you're never getting enough games. And then the National League was a mess because it was all a hodgepodge anyway, and there was nothing based on merit back then either. Look, you know, people. The moment that we start talking about structures in the GA Michael is the moment that people start clicking the red button and say, not for me, no thank you. They're just sick of structures. But I think just to touch on it briefly, I think we have actually we have landed on a good enough system of going, and it'll be very interesting to see how these wee Super Fours play out over the year. And I don't think it will diminish the provincial championships anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's funny because like the likes of Roscommon in particular, they'll still be going gung-ho to try and win a provincial championship, as will all the teams up in Ulster. And just touching on the other shock of the weekend, Deck, you probably didn't see too much of this, but Clare 14, Cork 13 points in the Munster Championship. Obviously, Brian Hurley was out, which is, you know, Cork's probably best forward and their talisman up front. But,
yeah.
Like, Colin Collins has done a remarkable job in Clare, getting up from 4 to 3 to 2 and then staying in 2 for, I think, 6 years. And, like, they really should have stayed up this year. They were 14-8 up on Kildare, lost 15-14. They were up against Dublin, ended up losing by a point as well. But it would have been very easy for things to be deflated going into the Munster Championship. Now it looks like the door is open for them potentially to get to a Munster final, and they're going to try and avenge that defeat to Limerick last year on penalties as well. But his ability to work with the, you know, limited enough resources that he has, but maximise them out. Like David Tubridy's retired this year. You're not thinking the Clare are going to be able to kind of get to a Munster final, but yet again, the minute you doubt them, that's when they'll come and prove you wrong again.
Yeah, look, you know, I mean, it's one of those ones that people are happy to, you know, why does he have so long with Clare? And that is that he's obviously, like, you know, extremely easy for the county board to deal with. Like, he's probably not hugely demanding, and that's what sometimes is the problem, is either a county board expects too much, or they are, you know, they're expecting miracles either. It's been slow and incremental progress and all the rest, but geez, like, you know, what more can you say about him? He has been one of these well documented figures in the GA, and I think this because he lifts the phone, he lifts the phone to reporters, and therefore he's going to be covered, and there's going to be goodwill. And then you look at maybe Twitter or something after a game, and the amount of journalists, GA journalists, they're all willing to say, fair play to that man. I like that man. I really appreciate that fella, because they see that he is achieving above his means. It goes back to counties like Roscommon, Monaghan, Clare, that don't have a massive population, football population, and still they just keep going and going and staying relevant and staying in the mix. It's great to see, but it doesn't happen without harmony at board level and without picking the right people to be the management.
Yeah, and they always, some people say when they were beaten by Derry comprehensively in that quarter final last year, maybe it's time for Colin Collins to go, or, he's brought them as far as he can bring them. I always think that's mad when you have somebody who's brought a team, further maybe than they've ever been before. Like, change is not always the option. Unless you have, a really good person to come in and someone who's on par or better than the manager that's there. Change is not the ideal thing. He kind of built that up as the biggest game in his Clare tenure, and it's just great to see him get a result there. Just touch quickly on the other semi-final. It was Killian Moran, the cornerback, the unlikely hero, I'd say, came up and hand-passed the ball over the bar. That helped them to a 14-13 win. Keelan Sexton was unreal as well, kicked some brilliant points. Jamie Malone came forward as he does from defence and kicked some great scores as well. In the other quarter final, Tipperary, it finished Tipperary 3-9, Waterford 1-11, so it was kind of a late Tip flurry. Jack Kennedy, who has a soccer background, dribbled through and put a lovely ball across for Stephen Kirk to finish, and then Paddy Featon got a late goal. It's actually a good performance from Waterford, in fairness, but the winners now face off against Kerry, which is, it's not a great reward, shall we say, and there's probably only going to be a beatdown expected there realistically. But you mentioned Armagh and Antrim earlier, Deck. Can you just touch briefly on that? It was probably business as usual for Armagh, and they're back on the horse again after being relegated from Division 1. Important, maybe just, I know it was, we probably haven't learned much about them, but probably just important to get back on the horse and put in a pretty comprehensive performance.
Yeah, but there's certain things that happen in Gaelic football that I look at, Michael, and I just think, like, why on earth is this happening? This is absolutely crazy, right? And one of them happened in the first half, and to me it just kind of summed up Antrim, because sometimes you just think that this is a county that I don't know if they take themselves seriously at all. And there was a 45, right? And Michael Byrne is their goalkeeper. He's a very good striker of the ball. He's got an awful lot of potential. He's a great goalie, right? Oisín McConville was talking before the game using Stephen Cluxton comparisons, right? But the ball was about a yard, or maybe a yard and a half off the sideline, right, from the 45. Stephen Cluxton, on his best day, was never going to kick that ball over the bar, right? Michael Byrne was never, ever going to kick the ball over the bar. When he started walking back, he had absolutely no room even for a run-up, So he had 3 or 4 steps at the most to kick this ball from the corner of the 45 and the sideline, right? And what happened? He ballooned it wide. But to me, management should be saying, right, if that happens, then when he's holding the ball and he's setting the ball, someone's making a move. Like, we've got to play that short, because all you're doing is spending about a minute and a half to tee that ball up, to kick it wide, and then everyone's deflated, and all of a sudden, then you're it's just another wide, it's just another deflating thing. And it's like, why did you even do that? What was the point in that?
That's probably about 60 yards out, Deck, realistically, at the corner of the 45. And as you say, if there's no room to operate there as well. It's so tight. Even I see in Croke Park now with sideline balls and stuff like that, with the artificial surface, actually makes it really, really difficult. You're going from one surface to another to strike a ball or to kick a ball. It's a bit mad. But yeah, as you say there, and he could have maybe worked an overlap or something potentially. That does not having a go at him.
There was no thought to that. There was no when Antrim were coming forward, it was this laboured thing. And then Antrim or Armagh would number up, like they would just get numbers over, pull them down into a running channel, and the next thing, then there's 2 men on them and another person arriving to strip the ball, and it just happened like that all day long. Like, and just they didn't offer anything. and Andy McEntee must be extremely frustrated. Like, you know, I don't know. It's just it's the same every year with Antrim. Like they are producing very little, like year on year on year, and they do. You know, they just should be at more. They should be at more. They should be a better GA county. But anyway, that's for another day.
Just on our ma play Cavan the next day now. Like that's there's some opportunity for the two of them. The winners of that, there's a fair opportunity getting to an Ulster final. Armagh obviously have like an abysmal record, you'd have to say, at provincial level under Geezer. What was that? That must be only their second or third provincial win under his reign. Where they've been really struggling for wins, haven't they?
Well, you know? Yeah, they got to the semi final, didn't they? In 2019, were beaten by Cavan in a replay. But they have produced a few different, like, but it all probably goes back to when they lose in some style. Like they lost in some style in Ballybuffet last year. They lost one year with a new guy in goals that no one ever. Well, he was a former outfield player. Like, you know, it was ahead of its time in the mid 2015-2016 season down in Breffni. Got a stuffing that time. You know, when they do tend to, when it goes wrong for them, it goes wrong for them sort of spectacularly. They have a chance. Jeepers, like, you know, the whole draw is churned up onto one side, like with Donegal down on that side too. If they can't make it, then people will be seriously asking about the manager, because this is season number 9, season number 10 if you count he was a selector in 2014, and they're going to want to see some kind of return, just simply on the amount of years spent, because it's unusual. Like, you know, whatever people may talk about the incremental improvements and the lack of success at underage in Armagh, you know, you just can't be a county manager forever, like, you know, without actually delivering something. Like, or as people will be saying, well, hold on, like, is Armagh just serving? Is it just here to exist so that someone is a county manager? Like, you know, there are, it's, you know, if there was even success somewhere along the line, you could have said it was there was a whiff of Mickey Hart being enthroned for maybe a season or two too long, but there's not even that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can you know, produce something big against Cavan, who are definitely a very dangerous prospect after getting up to Division 2. Deck, there's two things I just want to touch on just before I let you go. Obviously, you would have seen the news on Saturday night about the racial abuse towards Lee Chin in that challenge game between Tipperary and Wexford. So I'll just read out a couple of bits on it, and we might just chat briefly about it. Tipperary GA have condemned the racial abuse of Wexford star Lee Chin that brought a premature end to the county's senior hurling challenge game in Carrigan-Shore this afternoon. The match was which was in its closing stage. It was called to a halt by referee John Keenan after he was fully informed of the incident and will now be subject to a full investigation. In a statement released tonight, Tipperary GA said, the Tipperary senior hurlers played Wexford this afternoon in a senior hurling challenge game hosted by Carrick Swan Club. Unfortunately, as the game entered closing stages, a member of the public who was not connected to either Tipperary GA or the Carrick Swans Club made racial comments which were directed at a member of the Wexford team. Tipperary GA wished to state quite clearly that this kind of behaviour is totally unacceptable and has absolutely no place at our games and in our society. Tipperary GA, along with the senior hurling management, players and the Carrick Swan GA Club, do not condone this type of behaviour and wish to distance ourselves from any such comments. I know you've probably seen maybe the video going around online or various bits and pieces. Just like, unfortunately, this is one person. I will say that, and it's not. I don't think it's reflective of a whole society. But like, this sort of thing should not be going on at GA games. And it's just awful comments. And I know there was a lot of kids around the person that said it as well. I think this is something that needs to be dealt with, you know, as severely as they come, I have to say.
What, you know, I mean, it's the. It's not the fault of the GA that this happened, and the GA, in fairness, have made you know, many years ago, went and created, you know, the sanctions for these kind of offences, and like, you know, they've outlined many times, and these things have been enshrined in motions in Congress about the abhorrence of any kind of discrimination on the basis, on the grounds of sexuality, race, anything that can be, you know, misconstrued, or anything that can be used as a weapon against somebody. You know, it's cut and dried. The investigation will be cut and dried. There's video evidence there. The culprit will be identified. I would say I don't know how Lee Chin would feel about it, but I would say there's a little bit sanguine. Shouldn't happen. Nearly half feel that it wouldn't deeply affect him. I would hope it.
Unfortunately, probably because he's used to it, which is not a good thing either. And if you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, but also too, this is a man who's very self-assured. Hopefully, I don't know. I've never even had a conversation with him. I don't know. Maybe this could really, really damage him and dinge him. I would hope not. But you can see that he has the absolute love and loyalty of all his teammates. That straight away is completely apparent. He's got the respect of the entire GA community. It's the way he plays the game. Up north, people would talk about Leach and the time that he has for people, the time he has for the game of hurling. He's just one of these exemplary people in society anyway, that people have a great deal of time for. So I think that it'll all be dealt with. It'll all go through the proper processes. Maximum sanction will apply, I would imagine. And unfortunately, we have to move on and know that something like this will probably occur again sometime.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. The only deterrent, as you said there, is the harshest sanction possible, and try and stamp it out at the source. The other one I just wanted to chat to you about, Deck, was I don't know if you saw this over the weekend. The LGFA have attempted to silence players on topical matters like the Cavan ladies football strike, transgender policy, and the rise of players heading down under to play AFLW. So there's a little National Football League finals launch day tomorrow. But ahead of that, the Irish Sun, and it was a story by Jason Byrne, revealed an LGFA document suggesting how players should answer media questions ahead of the upcoming National Football League final launch, with each county involved being sent out a 4-page briefing. I'll just give you an example of one of the questions and answers, or possible questions and possible answers. So what are your thoughts on the recent strike by Cavan players over what they believe is a lack of support for their team for player welfare and expenses from their county board? This is what the document said. The suggested answer was, we're focusing entirely on our game and our performances. We hope that they get the support that they need, but I don't know the specifics of their situation, so I won't be getting into it. So there was proposed questions and suggested answers to about the transgender policy, about the rise of the AFLW and players leaving the LGFA, and about the Cavan ladies strike. I think when something like this is put down on paper, it's only natural. It's only natural that it's going to cause a bit of a storm or a hoo-ha when it reaches the public. It also potentially looks like you're trying to silence some of your top stars, and you don't want them to have an opinion on things. And from a journalist point of view, we love when players have an opinion on things. We love when they show a character and they show a bit of personality. What did you think when you saw this? I have to say, I think it was a bit mad, and it's probably something that should never be put down on paper either. They might have been able to brief players over the phone or through Zoom or something like that, maybe, if that's what they wanted to do.
I entirely agree with you, Michael. It's in one hand, it's really silly. It's expecting adults to, this is how to deal with a difficult question. But really, the question would only really be about the discourse around the LGFA, the games, the conditions they're playing under, the respect that they're given. If the ladies, if there is a strong character there, right, and they're willing to give their opinion, to me that is only furthering the cause of equality for Ladies Gaelic Football Association members. All you're doing is showing a wee bit of solidarity, and it's not like you have to tear strips off any organisation. Now, obviously, the intention with which the person who had been organising this call or question and response thing, they're doing their job too. It's just like the PA person who was caught in the middle of Kelly Harrington's interview. They're stepping in to try and diffuse the situation that was going bad for them. But it was going bad for them because of their own creation, because of their own lack of guidance. I suppose, and I can only guess, that something like that then could highlight to whoever's running this situation, this media opportunity, that they might be spooked by that and think, right, okay, we'll have to provide some guidance. Sticking it down on a document which yourself will always be leaked. That's the inevitable happened. The inevitable happened, and you know what? It's a good story if somebody is actually telling people what they should say if they're asked their opinion. They're not silencing people, like, and that's. I have no objection whatsoever if the phone had been lifted and a wee bit of guidance was given. Like, look, if someone is feeling uncomfortable, this is what they should say. If they're feeling comfortable answering the question, then they should just be trusted to say what they want, because at the end of the day, it's an amateur sport, and to try and tell someone that this is the opinion you should hold if you're asked for it is an extremely controlling corporate. It's got nothing to do with GA. I could imagine, people with massive endorsements, professional soccer players, tennis players, and that, understandably stripping themselves of their personality for those reasons. But like, there's absolutely no reason that should apply within the LGFA or GAA.
And it was obviously a disgruntled player who wasn't happy with the document that would probably have leaked the document, and that probably stands to reason as well. Dec, I'm just going to fly through the Leinster Championship games here, but thanks a million for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Always good to talk.
Same to you, Michael. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks, Dec. Talk to you soon. We just have a couple more games to go through. It's obviously a busy opening championship weekend. So in the Leinster Football Championship, Offaly had a 1-12 to 1-11 win over Longford. This was tight and tetchy in Pearse Park. Peter Cunningham got a great goal for Offaly in the first half, but Longford kind of roared back. I think they got the next 6 scores. Offaly had it level at half time. They sprung Bernard Panda Allen from the bench. He got a crucial score at the end to get through by a point. And I know, just listening from the comments from Martin Murphy, the manager, after, they were delighted because this was a game that the late Liam Kearns, the former Offaly manager who sadly passed away last month, had targeted. They wanted, his goals for the year were Division 3, to retain their Division 3 status and to get a championship win. They now have that championship win. Sets up a quarter-final date against Meath in 2 weeks' time in Tullamore, which they'll half fancy. Meath aren't exactly lighting it up. Probably should have beaten Meath in Partolchin a couple of years ago under John Mahan, so that'll be one that they'll fancy. The lads mentioned earlier about Sligo had a big win over London in that Connacht quarter-final, 220 to 12 points. They faced New York. I'm sure the celebrations are still ongoing in New York. We'll have Shane Carty on the Poacher and Vardy show tomorrow night. Whether he's recovered or not is another story. Just a quick one on Shane Carty as well. He kicked the levelling score with his left leg, which wouldn't be untypical of him, but it wouldn't be the common thing. And the reason he kicked it with his left foot was because he actually tore his quad the week of the game. So an unbelievable score from him, and in what was an unbelievable occasion. Nicky Brosnan, who's born and bred in New York but of Kerry stock, scoring the winning penalty. It's just amazing drama. Go back to the Leinster Football Championship preliminary round. Wicklow had a 2-12 to 10 points win over Carlow. Oisin McConville's men bouncing back from defeat in the Division 4 final to get an important win. They face Kildare the next day. Again, a Kildare team that aren't exactly lighting it up, and were probably lucky somewhat to save their Division 2 status. So Wicklow would fancy a shot off them. Laois had a 2-17 to 2-13 win over Wexford. Mark Barry with the 2 goals. I think he ended up with 2-4. Their prize is a date against Dublin the next day. So, a massive, massive task coming down the tracks. No point in saying any different there. And the other Leinster quarter final is Westmeath against Louth. So that's a really interesting game. You have the Tailteann Cup winners going up against Mickey Hart's Louth, who've been flying all season. Just fly through another couple of quick games that we have, or quick other scores that I haven't maybe said. Armagh 20 points, Antrim 1-8 in that Ulster Senior Football Championship preliminary round that Dec mentioned there. Ulster Under 20 Football Championship semi-final, it was Derry 11 points, Donegal 5. Ulster Minor Football round 2, finished Monaghan 3-17 down 1-10. Wexford defeated the reigning All-Ireland Under-20 champions in the first round of the Under-20 Hurling Championship and finished Wexford 2-17, Kilkenny 20 points. But obviously the Kilkenny were without Billy Drennan, without Garrod Dunn, without Timmy Clifford, without a couple of more players that were all involved in the senior squad. So I'd imagine that's a bit of a headache for Derek Ling, in the sense of, is he going to use his under-20 stars as part of the senior team, and maybe they'll be ruled out of under-20 games, or will they be let go back to the under-20s? It'd be interesting to see, particularly in the wake of the league final loss to Limerick. And in the under-20 Tier 2 round 2, it finished Westmeath 2-14, Antrim 1-8. Just fly through a few quick fixtures. 3 So today, Easter Monday, outside of the Irish Grand National in Fairyhouse, which I'm going to later on the day, there's a couple of big GA games. Limerick face Waterford in the Munster Under-20 Football Championship quarter-final. Tipperary face Clare in the other quarter-final. The Leinster Under-20 Hurling Tier 2 Round 2. It's Kildare against Kerry in O'Moore Park today at 2 p.m. And tomorrow there's a raft of Under-20 Football Championship quarter-finals. Louth against Kildare, Meath against Westmeath. And then on Wednesday, there's Connacht Under-20 Football Championship semi-final between Sligo and Mayo. Down play Monaghan in the Ulster equivalent to semi-final. There's a load of Leinster Minor Football Championship games. There's also a Munster Under-20 Round 3 game on Wednesday night. It's Waterford against Clare in Farrarfield. And Leinster Under-20 Hurling Championship Tier 2 Round 1, Meath against Antrim in Darver. Thanks a million for joining me again, folks. Great to have Niall Moran, Cottle Craig and Declan Bogue on today's show. Shane will be back from his holidays in the US. He'll be back on Thursday's show, and we'll be looking forward to all the hurling and football action from another busy weekend. Before I go, obviously the show is sponsored by OurGameSupporters.com. I've actually neglected to talk about one of the most important results of the weekend, and that's within the Joe McDonagh. So Mayo and Offaly had a brilliant win against Laois. It finished, I think it was 317 to 121 in the finish. Really, really good. 319 to 122, I should say. Really, really good win. My own club, my own Cattle, was outstanding here. He ended up with 2 of the goals. Got a really, really good tally again. The Offaly defence stood really, really strong. In the wake of a bit of a barrage from Laois at different stages of the second half, but having played 4 weeks in a row, won the league final, and then they were going into their 5th week in a row. This is a big win for Offaly against our local rivals. It was a real seesaw of a game, but came out 3 points to the good in the wind-up. Owen Cattle, as I said, finished with 211, 6 frees and 165. Joey Keenan got the other goal. Killian Kiley was a really important point at the end. Picky Matter was the pick, no pun intended, of the Laois cohort. He finished with 12 points, 5 frees and 2 65s. Massive result for Carlow as well. Finished 523 to Kildare's 19 points. So I was a bit wary of, or worried about Kildare going into this game at the weekend, just because of the deflation maybe involved in losing that 2A final to Offaly. And Carlow have obviously been targeting the McDonagh, seem to have all their best players back on board. And this is just a huge result for them, you'd have to say. It really kind of gets things going from Carlow from the off. Paddy Boland got a hat-trick of goals. Marty Kavanagh finished with 12 points, 9 frees and a 65. It's a huge result. Conor Keogh ended up with 2-2 for them as well. And Kildare are going to be on the back foot and having to try to bounce back straight away. And in the other Joe McDonagh game, after a slow start, Kerry had a comprehensive win over Down, and that comes in the wake of a couple of players being dropped from the panel due to discipline reasons in the run-up to that game. Finished Kerry 126, Down 114. My goat of the week will be my own clubmate, Owen Cattle, for his performance for Offaly in the Joe McDonagh. And Stephen Loftus just has a comment in there. Galway Miners gave Kilkenny a fair beating. They did in Nolan Park. So Galway coming into Leinster and making a fair statement already. But as I said, we'll be back. I'll be back on Thursday's show with Shane. And we look forward to you joining us then. Many thanks to Niall Moran, Cottle Craig and Declan Bogue for joining us on today's show. We will chat again on Thursday.